This film presented with the compliments of Montana Highway Patrol.
Under this ambulance sheet lies Sam Robertson, age 17. His parents proudly called him Son. His girl affectionately called him Robbie. His little brother admiringly called him Sammy. But the nickname in which he took the greatest pride was the one he'd earned among his high school friends, Speedy. And that's what killed him. Why did this have to happen? What were the reasons for Sammy's persistent speeding? What were the causes and events that my first call was made upon Sammy's family? Talked with his father, a well-liked and respected resident of his community. When I told him what I wanted, Mr. Robertson at once consented to give me the history of Sammy's driving. At first, Sammy's father had resisted his son's request for permission to use the family car. The issue had become quite a conflict between them until finally Mr. Robertson reluctantly gave in, on condition that Sam buy his own gas and oil. This to teach him the value of money. It was a sound and sensible obligation. And he also earnestly admonished Sam to drive carefully and heed all the traffic rules. But Mr. Robertson's own driving habits left much to be desired. And although he was a skillful driver, many small collisions were avoided only by the alertness of the other drivers. Perhaps it was while watching his own father drive that Sam first got the unfortunate idea that a good driver can take chances. And Mr. Robertson said that Sam had been before me only once on a speeding charge. I remembered the incident well. Sam admitted going too fast and was willing to take his punishment. But his father was quite outraged at the fact that the police haul in good, clean-cut kids for driving a little fast, especially when they're good drivers, while the streets are filled with thieves and murderers. It was a standpoint all too often encountered. How much did it contribute to Sammy's own attitude toward speeding? And I recall that Sammy's little brother, Billy, with fierce pride had said to me, "Sammy can drive better and faster than anyone." Billy was convinced that it was the other drivers that were the bad ones, for Sammy never had any trouble. It was clear to me that this obvious hero worship from his younger brother must have been important to Sammy, perhaps making him take more reckless chances and drive even faster. My next stop was the high school Sammy had attended. I talked to several of Sammy's teachers. Soon after Sammy had enrolled in the school, he had become popular with the other students. They all agreed with the opinion voiced by one of his teachers who said that Sammy seemed to be a conscientious and responsible youngster. A good student, not brilliant, but intelligent and showing good common sense in his work. I made it a point to talk to some of Sammy's friends. In his attempt to become accepted and looked up to by his schoolmates, Sammy had tried to impress them with his driving. He sure could handle a car at any speed, they told me. But in spite of this, most of them wouldn't ride with him. Once Sammy had earned his friends' admiration, he thought his reputation for fast driving had to be kept up. Even his girl Wendy admitted that she thought his speeding manly and courageous. And now she felt ashamed and guilty as she told me of the thrilling sense of power she had shared with Sammy speeding. If only she had realized. Wendy told me that recently one of Sammy's close friends had been in a wreck and might be permanently crippled. But Sammy's attitude seemed to have been the usual. It can't happen to me. And his own reckless speeding continued. He took more chances than ever, almost defiantly now. And I was told how Sammy was scornful of cautious drivers and always told woman driver jokes. I learned how Sammy used to boast of his recipe for beating a rap if stopped by a patrolman for a traffic violation. His trick was always to be extra courteous and polite, act real remorseful, and say, "Yes, officer," all the time. It often worked. Sammy had actually been stopped several times and let go with a warning. I went to see Sammy's coach and found him on the field. He told me that only a few days ago, Sammy had tried out for first base. But he hadn't been able to make it. Perhaps Sammy had wanted to make up for this failure in some other way through his speeding, which resulted in his death. From the doctor who had given Sammy a recent physical examination, I learned that he was in tip-top shape. He felt that the cause of Sammy's collision had been nothing physical. His reflexes were sound, his eyes were perfect, his heart was strong. Why did it happen then? Not because of slow reaction time, but because of reckless speeding, and perhaps an attitude. Sammy worked a part-time job after school, and his employer told me that he had found him to be a dependable boy, friendly and courteous, and he never knew him to drink or smoke. He also told me that the day before Sammy's unfortunate mishap, he had asked for a raise, a request which it had been necessary to deny. Sammy had been disappointed, unduly so, he felt, and he'd thought the boy probably needed the extra money to meet his expenses with the car. Then the following day, Saturday, Sammy had picked up his girl to go for a ride. Not just one reason for Sammy's speeding, but many. And they had brought us both here. Sammy's early difficulties with his father over permission to use the car might have caused his mind to look upon it as a symbol of adult power and superiority. And speeding became a way of exercising this power. And his own father's driving example and attitude might have given him the dangerous notion that it's all right for a good driver to take chances. The admiration his speeding earned him from his little brother and the popularity with his friends at school must have been necessary and important for Sammy, and subconsciously, he must have wanted to make up in this way for other small failures and disappointments. Sammy's speeding then was an emotional outlet, and a tragically ill-starred one. For it was a compensation for feeling of insecurity and inferiority, unhealthy thrill-seeking, immature defiance of authority, and a lack of a sense of responsibility, as well as misguided attempts to show superiority. These, then, were some of the reasons for Sammy's speeding. There may have been others. If there were, he took them with him.